Why do you think consumer products kind of take a backseat to like tech, especially like MBA programs?
I don't know why it is with MBA programs, but I think just in general, it's that okay, if you tell me some technology that I've never heard about before, or in some space that I don't really know too much about, I'm like, oh, that seems novel. I've never heard of this before. There's no direct comparison that I can make. So like let me listen to everything that they're saying very, very clearly. Whereas with athletic shoes, for example, everyone knows Nike, right? So as soon as you say athletic shoes, they in their head they're like, "What about Nike? What about Nike? What about Nike?" And then like every question you get is like, basically, "What about Nike?" And it's similar if you were saying, "I'm going to make potato chips," be like, "What about Lay's? What about Lay's? What about Lay's?" Same with like soda, what about Coke? What about Pepsi? Whereas like cybersecurity, not a lot of us know too much about it. So we can't really say, well, what about cybersecurity company X? Whereas if you look into all these different industries, like they're all crowded, and to an extent, no idea is new. Really, like everyone has these ideas at some point. So it's really rare that you get a completely new, completely differentiated product. But I think just because so many people know about consumer brands, because they're basically like household names, you're always going to get people comparing you to those and saying, how are you going to be differentiated? Whereas in other industries, people just don't know the really big players and who's dominating the space. So they're not so obsessed with differentiation. I don't know why I mean, maybe in the business school community for us, it's the fact that Chicago kind of pushes a lot of startups into the new venture challenge, and then they try to take a piece of the companies that go through the new venture challenge. So if you just look at it statistically, technology companies are worth more. So they're probably going to want to push people. They have a financial interest in pushing people to technology. And then also, I guess, if you're just looking at the stats and you don't care about where people have a passion, it would be like, okay, your greatest chances of success financially are in the technology industry. So just focus on that. So I guess that's what it is. And just in general, tech feels kind of new and sexy, whereas consumer products isn't. So those would be some of the reasons I would list, but I'm not 100% sure. What do you think?
Yeah, I think all those reasons and perhaps just the model itself. I used to watch this show called like Silicon Valley like all the time. Hilarious show. I think it was on like HBO. But anyway, like one of the episodes, the startup, which was not Robin Hood. It's whatever the name of the guy, Pied Piper. So Pied Piper, like they were actually moving towards profitability. And one of their biggest investors was like, no, we do not need to be profitable. Like profitability is bad. This is not the way to go. And it seems like to a, I guess a consumer product like founder, that seems very counterintuitive. But to a tech, that's actually like the model. Because once you're profitable, then they can kind of the valuation changes because they can base it off of like your current profits. They can base it off of like future. They can look at your current profits and like you know um, track it in the future and make estimates off of that, and that can kind of limit you, and you can lose a lot of value just off of like your profitability aspect. Whereas, and so I feel like investors, even investors like you mentioned, like the New Venture Challenge, so that would be like the school, they can turn a profit without the company being profitable for some years. You think of like Uber and Amazon, a lot of other like tech companies who are not profitable for many years, but their investors were getting rich as they were going through different rounds of funding. So like there's a way to like make money even though the company's not making money. And I think that weird like tech type of model lends itself to investment a bit more than just a consumer product, because the consumer product has to kind of prove itself, and it has to go and make sure that it has a no kidding like consumer base who's willing to buy the product, and it has to show that the consumer base is buying the product, and do it at a very high level before, or relatively high level, before investors are even interested in it. And I think schools like U Chicago and other big schools in the NBA arena understand that. They understand that because they do a lot of investments themselves. And so it's not as attractive to them to kind of push a consumer product unless they see it as being a true unicorn. Otherwise, their return on investment is capped or very low. So pushing these tech products out there, they have a higher chance of making more. And it's I think that's one of the reasons why they kind of, I don't know if they push it more or they just like reward tech ventures a bit more than consumer products.